Good evening,
started.
and welcome back to Post-Apoc Horse Talk. I'm your host, Gallons Aegis, and this is my co-host, BG. Say hello, BG.
Hi, everybody.
So before we go on tonight, to avoid cluttering the chat and to be more expedient later, if you could ask any questions during the show, BG will compile them into a Q&A section for everyone. And now with that out of the way, our guest tonight is an incredibly prolific author. To name a few, she's written... Sorry, your voice is very feminine, my bad.
It's a common mistake.
He has written FOE The Trip, FOE The Unscrewed Audio Files, and FOE Icarus, to name but a few. If this was not enough works for one person to have made, our guest is also working on a new project. You may be aware of the Shoddy Cat Storyteller series. Well, our guest is working on a storyteller series for FOE. So please, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our guest tonight, Comic Sans Pony.
Hello.
Hello and welcome. You enjoying your time on the show thus far? Apologies for the misgendering you.
It's fine. Like it's when I'm talking on the phone, people just think that I sound. It's a common occurrence, and I've just learned to accept it.
This is my bad.
No, it's fine.
Well, let's begin our interview where we intend to start. Hopefully at the beginning. You've written a lot of fiction. A whole heck of a lot. In a fandom that has the unfortunate traits of not finishing its stories, how did you manage to make so many complete works?
Well, it wasn't always that way. I had, I think, 3 canceled fics. Ballad of a Crystal Pony, I ended up canceling. A connected story to that, Adrift, I ended up canceling. And for some reason, I had the crazy idea of writing a follow-up equestrian story that included, like, the OCs from the Vernalysis community. And that got 1 chapter, and then I promptly canceled it. So, I do have a habit of having fics that end up not being finished. It's just my first actual fic that I finished, Unscrewed Audio Files. It definitely was a unique take on the genre, and I was surprised that I finished that one. So it's a lot shorter than your fic that you normally see. Like it's no Fallout Equestria or Project Horizon in length, but it definitely exists as a complete story that has continued on to several branching sequels. So I still have yet to actually finish my legit actual story fic that isn't supposed to be I wouldn't say that, but it's still connected to the audiophile series and all that kind of stuff, but it's more of your standard fic versus being a bunch of audio recordings kind of thing. Icarus, which not exactly regretting the title, but I don't know if it actually is as fitting as I thought it was when I named it.
So you were saying the person didn't fly too close to the sun?
It's no, it's not necessarily that. It's just there probably would have been better titles, and maybe I'll retitle it. I don't know if you can do that. Should I? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll figure that out when I actually get back to writing it, since I haven't actually updated that story in over a year at this point. So, although I have written a chapter or so of its sequel, even though the story itself hasn't been finished.
Well, I'll chalk that one up to having so much inspiration it just flows over. And on that same vein, our next question is, well, they all seem to be very different from each other, your works, it seems. They tell very different stories from what I can tell. Perhaps you could tell our audience here tonight what inspired all of this, or how all these stories came about. Or maybe just a selection of your favorites.
Well, my longest running little series, as I mentioned, I refer to it as the Audio Files series, started with unscrewed, went on to Brittleshine's quest, and then Hold the Pineapple, and I guess currently now I think it's on the one I'm currently writing is Find Your Spark. I was actually playing Borderlands, which is not exactly, it was just like a similar genre to Fallout. Not exactly, it's not like post-apocalyptic, I guess. And it was one of those fetch quests where you have to go around the area and find these missing audio logs for the character of Tannis. And as you're listening to them, you kind of see your slow descent into insanity. Including treating the recorder as if it's another character. Like apparently at one point Tannis had like a romantic relationship with her recorder. And so I was just like thinking, like, what if I made like a Fallout Equestria story that was along the same premise? You just have a character talking to a recorder who might be partially insane or all insane. And for some reason, when I put words to Google document, words to paper didn't make sense because it's on the internet. Words to Google document, and I ended up choosing Screw Loose, because in the show, or at least in the fanon of the show, she thinks she's a dog and is that crazy mare from various episodes, background pony character. And so like and the story's kind of created itself. Like I didn't actually have a direction for that story when I started it. Premise was Ponyville Hospital was located somewhere near Whitetail Woods, so it got heavily irradiated when the bombs fell, and like everywhere else in Equestria, the people got abandoned, like all the mental patients got like abandoned, and Screw Loose ended up ghoulifying, and it somehow returned her sanity, and she actually could recall "I'm not a dog" kind of thing, and then she wanted to try to find her sister, which again was kind of relying upon the existing fan canon around Screw Loose that another character, Shoeshine, was related to her. And so it just became the main quest of the story, which technically, spoiler alert, didn't get finished in that fic at least, was finding out where her sister ended up and if her sister was safe. I ended up being that her sister was in Stable 1, which if you've read Fallout Equestria, she ghoulified. Canterlot ghoulified, at least. And so basically, to make a long, rambly story short, I liked how the story of Professor Tannis in Borderlands was told through, like, audio logs, and so I made a similar story to that.
Well, I've got to say, I did end up listening to the audio version of that, and it was a pretty interesting story, I'll be honest.
Yeah, if you do go through that, trigger warning for audio log number 4. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I'm aware of that one. I was hoping I wasn't going to have to mention it, but there we go. That question is big no, Touch. No, don't listen to that one if you're of a sensitive position.
Yeah, I made sure I put it. It's basically I made sure I put like warnings in like the description of the story, a author's note in that chapter, and Forrest M was actually unsure he'd even read that chapter, and I think he still skipped large portions of it because it definitely went to a place I didn't think I'd ever go in a story. I was like, I'm like, well, I need. It wasn't more like, oh, I need scarring stuff to go over. No, it was more like this kind of thing is an unfortunate thing that does happen to people who can't like speak up for themselves. And I'm like, and it just, like I said, I had no official plans for this story, so I'm like, wow, okay, I guess this is happening.
I mean, you did say you had no plans for it, so you could have quite simply wrote it and then went, I don't like this, I think I'll go somewhere else with this.
Well, it's not that I tried to make it I don't want to spend the entire time discussing the awkward chapter, because it still plays a part in the overall story, like, because Screwless doesn't remember what happened while she thought she was a dog, and she's finding it out through these audio recordings, which are on the recording device that she has. There's what she refers to as native recordings, which are from the various doctors or people who are posing as doctors that are her caretakers. And she does get revenge on the person who assaulted her, so there's that.
Spoilers, everyone.
What spoilers? If you're listening to this, you're probably going to get a lot of spoilers of my stories. I'm sorry. I am a walking spoiler alert.
Indeed. Well,
and I did it when I initially wrote the chapter. I'm like, do I really want the story to go this way? And I'm like, and I did. Usually, like, I would have written the chapter, maybe gone through it for spelling errors, and I still occasionally go back and find spelling errors and stuff that I messed up on and fix it. And I actually sat on this chapter for a little longer than just writing it and posting it, kind of thing, because like I wasn't sure, did I really want to go this direction? And in the end, I ended up posting it, and so that's why I'm like, trigger warning. It definitely contains a non-consensual incident. Let's go with that for vagueness. And I don't think I'll be going there with any of my other stories. I think that was like the one time. I mean, Project Horizons had a chapter like that too, which had all the
a lot of chapters like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not the only Fallout Question story to breach that topic, but I don't think I'll be covering it again, especially because I don't have much. Thankfully, don't have much experience in that area.
Well,
I mean, it has to be you have to gracefully approach it, if at all, and not make it gratuitous. It has to have a purpose. It's pretty touchy.
I'd argue that if we're gonna, we do have a habit on this show of, whenever the opportunity to get the cudgel out and just smack Project Horizons in the kneecaps comes out, we usually do that. But yeah, it's very, very gratuitous, and it sometimes doesn't serve a point in the plot, and there's some really, really messed up stuff in that story.
Yeah.
So yeah, now that I've broken some kneecaps already, let's settle that cudgel back down for a moment.
Okay. And anyway, so that was the inspiration, bringing it back to the inspiration for Screwless' story. Primarily, it was, like I said, Borderlands and Tannis' story and her descent into madness, and Screwless being the opposite, her recovery from madness. But then I actually ended up having an open-ended ending to it. Again, spoiler alert. And so, like, okay, well, now I gotta actually have her meet. I had Pinkie Pie predict that using a pinky sense and as a sort of end-all be-all of ways of leaving open-ended things more concrete. I'm like, okay, Pinkie predicted it, so it still has to technically happen. And so, jump 210 years later, we actually have the sequel. Inspired by the open-endedness of the original fic, we now follow the ghoulified Shoeshine, aka Brittleshine, as she goes on a quest to figure out what happened to her sister following the final audio log of unscrewed audio files. So it's kind of continues in that sense. Though this one I was kind of experimenting. We have multiple characters this time. And including a brief little interludes from DJ Pone 3, because Brittleshine is sending off her recordings every now and then to I got a message on got a message on Discord from a friend. Anyways, distracted me. And so that one kind of had a few interesting additional characters, because we had a cast of characters who would be recording the audio logs. We had Brittle Shine, the arguably main character of that one. Dr. Stable Rate, who in the canon that I was going with was former fiance of Screwloose, who she couldn't remember for half her story. She couldn't remember who he was, amnesia and whatnot. As well as a Diamond Dog, and then this lecherous sergeant from a covert spin-off, I guess, kind of the Steel Rangers. Not really. It was kind of a Ministry of Awesome thing. It was borrowed from Visual Pony, the narrator's story. And I talked with him and got permission to use the character and all that kind of stuff. But his story definitely has some interesting things that I wouldn't necessarily consider canon to my stories, but it was still interesting to use his lore as well. I'm not going to go into the description of why I started every single story in the audiophile series. We'd be here all day.
Yes, I think that's a probably fair point. We should move on to our next question of the night.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. If people want to ask more questions regarding audiophiles or any of my other fics, they can ask it during the audience question and answer section.
Yeah, of course. So feel free to ask those questions in the chat. We will answer them when we get to the Q&A section tonight. So, moving on to our next question, continuing on the same vein of what your inspiration of these stories, we'll start with our first contentious question of the night. If you had to pick one of your fics for someone to read, which one would you suggest over all the others?
Despite the trigger warning for chapter 4 or audio log number 4, I would say the Unscrewed Audiophiles, because I wouldn't necessarily call that my magnum opus. I would probably refer to the Storyteller as my magnum opus kind of thing. But Unscrewed Audiophiles was like the first fic that I actually finished. After a few cancellation fics, like I mentioned beforehand. And so I guess I'm the most proud of that one. It's definitely the one that doesn't have the unfortunate of like, well, that escalated quickly kind of thing. It definitely, because the other fics in the series since then kind of have that problem of like, well, that escalated quickly. It really got out of hand fast.
I mean, again, I'm picking up my cudgel again. Project Horizon does it worst. Does it worse than that? Sorry. Anyway, I'm going to put it back down now.
Because like the twist, which I won't spoil it. In Hold the Pineapple, I wanted to draw it out a little more, but I couldn't figure out how to. So I'm like, I guess we're going for a sudden heel face turn. Cool. Okay.
All right. Well,
so yeah, Unscrewed Audiophiles, I definitely recommend the audio version of it, because the true form of my Audiophiles series would be an audio version, which I believe Forrest is planning on doing eventually, but he has a lot of...
I believe he did already. He did it. I listened to it.
Oh no! He did the first fic, but he hasn't done the other fics.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
I gave him permission to do them, and we might even upload them to Nuclear Horseman Studios instead of Forrest's channel, or as well as Forrest's channel. Like, we'll upload them to both places because I am planning on possibly making some connections to the Storyteller. In fact, I think I already have in the epilogue of Hold the Pineapple, there was a reference to an event in the Storyteller series that technically hasn't happened yet.
Well, while we're talking about the Unscrewed Audiophiles, there was something that, when I listened to it, I think factually incorrect to commonly held FOE lore.
What?
I believe we go with the same thing as original Fallout went, that Dash is a post-war drug, not a pre-war one.
I'm actually not entirely sure if I mentioned Dash. Did I mention Dash?
Yes, it was mentioned. Spoilers, everyone. So there was a part of the chapter where it's
I read
mentioned.
it so long ago. So
Yeah, it's part of a chapter where it's mentioned that the main antagonist of your story is using the patients of Ponyville General Hospital Psych Ward for experiments for drugs, and one of the drugs they use was mentioned was Dash.
Well, I also mentioned Moondust, and again, that's the Project Horizons inclusion, and that feels like a post-war thing as well.
That's true, but it's not a big thing. Like,
Well,
it could be that Dash was originally inspired by a pre-war drug. That's entirely reasonable to say.
Well, because actually, no, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if it was Project Horizons or Fallout Equestria that had it. There was something about Rainbow Dash saying that Dash on Dash would not be, it would break the fabric of the universe. Like,
if anyone in the chat knows better than either of us, please feel free to enlighten us.
It's weirdly like it tries to follow original Fallout lore before Bethesda came in and messed it up with Fallout 4, with Dash being a derivative of Brahmin dung, but at the same time, some kind of amphetamine, like I think I'm getting some kind of methamphetamine type of drug existed that like slowed down the user's perception of time and such. So it's possible there was a wartime equivalent, and since it has kind of gained a new way of creating it, or better, well, not better, but like I don't know, different way of creating it. I'm pretty sure maybe it was like towards the end of the war it was created. I don't know. There's a lot of I consider myself pretty much a pretty good expert on the lore, but I still have several people on my storyteller project that probably know lore better than I do. And when it comes to the chems, I'm not entirely fully aware of all their origins, so I might have messed up.
All right, so just quick note in the chat. It is mentioned that it was indeed a pre-war drug, as mentioned in a memory orb.
Well, then I recant my previous statement. That was my bad.
Okay, maybe I actually looked that up when I wrote that chapter.
In Stable 29, I guess we can use the break to read that up.
Indeed, we could. But still, let's carry on with the questions then. So, which fic was your favorite to write of all the ones that you've written? It can either be finished or in progress. And it can be in any way you want to define it as favorite. It may have been to write, or just happy where it ended, or just anything that you think makes it stand out for you.
I don't think I can. Excuse me. I don't think I can pick one. There's quantifying it in different ways. Unscrewed audio files for being my first like completed fic. People need to stop messaging. I should turn my.
I really recommend you just set yourself to do not disturb.
Do not disturb, because Forrest just sent me a message. I guess he's watching the stream or something.
Oh, if you are in the stream, hello, Forrest. Your work is very good.
He's saying that he will make the other audio file series eventually. Anyways, back to what I was saying. Unscrewed audio files is my favorite because it's my first like completed fic kind of thing. And it kind of spawned a sort of I call it branching sequels, because there's so many different like unfinished areas of the story that I can actually make like multiple sequels to one fic kind of thing versus a single linear progression of sequels. Hold the Pineapple, I liked it because it kind of was because it explored a more of a wartime aspect. And I really liked the twist, which again, I wish I could have drawn out more, but people seem to enjoy it, so at least it was getting some good reading out of, I don't know. I like the twist. I wasn't sure if it would work, but it did. And then my probably like overall, if I had to really pick one favorite, it would be the Storyteller series. Just because I really like lore, and
Well, then
so
you'll absolutely love our next segment, which is all about lore and discussion.
yay.
But anywho, I'll let you carry on your statement.
Well, that was it. So I have my three favorites for different reasons. Unscrewed Audio Files being the first like completed story, so I'm proud of it. Hold the Pineapple because of a somewhat interesting twist, and then the Storyteller because it's the Storyteller.
Well, while we're on with the Storyteller, perhaps you could give the audience a bit of a sneaky peek about your intentions with it.
No offense to the Fallout Equestria wiki, but the part of the reason I'm making it is because there are missing or incomplete pages on the wiki, and I don't have the time to go through and kind of fill them in, especially because then it would have giant blocks of spoiler text kind of thing.
Yeah, and also it's dry AF.
So there's the there's a reason the wiki exists how it exists. So you get like the basic information on something if you don't understand it when you're reading a story, but it doesn't necessarily contain every little bit of lore. And so I was, like I said, and so like, what if I wrote this as an in-universe perspective on things? And I was watching a lot of Fallout Shoddycast stuff at the time, and I'm like, that could be an interesting kind of ponification. At the time, no other versions of it existed. I'm mentioning at the time because there is a short fic, I don't know if it's completed or not, that I found and came across that had a storyteller-esque character. But it kind of, I read through it to make sure it wasn't completely the same as mine. This other storyteller fic had it how the actual storyteller was, where it was a Steel Ranger versus a Applejack's Ranger, and it kind of took place just before Little Pip left her stable. I think even one chapter it even showed from like an outsider's perspective, Little Pip being abducted by the slavers in like the second chapter. So,
I mean, my question about that is, the Applejack's Rangers didn't exist until Little Pip.
Yeah, well, no. Well, the other story that I'm talking about had it be a Steel Ranger. That was the storyteller.
Okay, I see. Your story has them as an Applejack's Ranger.
Yeah, the storyteller series currently takes place 3 years after Little Pip.
Okay, so, that's good.
I believe in canon that's 2 years before Gardens of Equestria actually goes off.
As far as I'm aware, it's never specifically stated when it goes off. It happens at some point between 1.5 and 10 years.
I was told that it was apparently confirmed at some point to be 5 years after Little Pip. They finally find all the new elements of Harmony bearers, and they set it off or whatever. So I tried to like kind of just in between kind of thing.
Right.
And then time will progress forward. So at some point we will be in a post Gardens era. But currently, even though it's post Sunshine and Rainbooms, it is still pre Gardens going off.
Okay.
My back to the question. My intentions for the storyteller is kind of to be a little, no offense to the Fallout Equestria wiki, a little better than the wiki in kind of introducing new readers to these grand lore concepts that instead of going through every single fic and like slowly finding this stuff out. So there's a huge spoiler alert, I guess, in front of the storyteller as a series. But it's like, I'm kind of confused on what the Ministry of Morale did. Oh, here's a whole episode on the Ministry of Morale and what they did. With several hints at future stories, such as mentioning Hoofington a few times in the various secret projects, because the storyteller hasn't been out to Hoofington, so he doesn't know information on them, and so that way I have an excuse to send him to Hoofington and find information to then exposit to any pony in earshot.
That's kind of what the storyteller does in the Shoddycast version, so yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, and I mean, and like the Shoddycast version, up until Austin took over, it actually has its own story as well. I don't like I think Shoddycast changed ownership, just as a brief side note, and the other person who tried to do a storyteller episode but like strip it of its like overstory kind of thing, and it felt like a shadow of its former self, and I don't think he's planning on making any more anytime soon. It did not get a good reaction from fans.
I mean, when you suck out the life of something, things don't tend to go down so well.
Yeah, that was part of what I liked about the Shoddycast series was, even though it was a series, and they actually had several ones, also one for Skyrim, I think, was that you had this character who existed in universe, but was also telling the lore of the universe, and he even had his own little story. Which in the case, which I don't want to spoil the story of the storyteller because it is only 3 episodes in, but 2 episodes in, third one's in production. But it kind of has it had more. I tried to make it its own thing. Like the storyteller, I actually gave him a name, where storyteller is just a title, not like what he's not his like. His name is actually going to be revealed. Actually, it already has been revealed. Is Paladin Whiskey Pickles. It definitely has a lot more allusions to the Storyteller series as we'll go along. But it's only really in name does it connect to the Shoddycast series. And to actually answer the question, because I'm rambling now. The intentions of the Storyteller is to introduce new people to these grand concepts that might not have time to go through all the larger fics. For example, I was watching a video from Lightning Bliss where she was reviewing Fiara the Tank Girl's Dead Tree story, and Lightning Bliss admitted that she's not a huge fan of Grimdark and probably won't be going through the main story, but she really enjoyed going through the wiki pages and getting lost in an endless rabbit hole of the lore on there. And so it's kind of for people, fans of longtime fans of the series, to be able to refresh their knowledge on the lore, as well as new fans to the series who might not want to go through the bigger fics, but still want to know the lore, kind of thing.
All right.
If that makes sense. I feel like I'm talking in circles and rambling and not reaching a point. So I hope there is a point somewhere in there.
I'm sure we can find it. But on that point, here is a moment to shamelessly plug the next episode. If you want to shamelessly plug, feel free. If you want to, spill some beans here about what's going on in the next one.
I mean, it's already been. I try to set it up that at the end of each episode, another character will mention the next topic, and then the storyteller says the classic line of "That's a story for another day." At the end of the Ministry of Image episode, the character of Mud wants to know more information about the Ministry of Morale because he's afraid of Pinkie Pie, as he rightly should be.
Everyone should be scared of that.
Pinkie Pie is watching forever. And just as well, I mean, in that episode, he gets incapacitated before he can actually say the line. But he was going to say that's a story for another day, implying that the next episode was going to be the Ministry of Morale. And I will kind of spoil the first 7 topics. The first topic was the Great War. The second topic, Ministry of Image. Third topic is going to be Ministry of Morale. And then the remainder of the first 7 episodes is going to be the rest of the ministries. I'm not going to necessarily say what order, but the first 7 episodes are basically like
the baseline lore you'd need to understand going in.
Yes, you have an overview of the war, you have an overview of the ministries. sometimes tied more closely to the stories of the Ministry Mayors, but I might in the future specifically cover the Ministry Mayors versus just the Ministry. And there's certain topics as I'm I don't think this doesn't make sense that he'd have this information, so he currently doesn't. And so that's when he mentions things like Project Eternity or Project Steel Pony or Project Horizons. Like he'll there's mentions of these redacted projects in various mainframes he's found, but he can't find further information because they were Hoofington based, and Hoofington is basically like its own wasteland. It definitely has its own fair share of secrets, and it's like its own country kind of thing. So it's like the episodes would be far too long if I decided to actually cover everything Hoofington related in the initial 7 episodes. So that's why, spoiler alert for season 2, if we ever get there, volume 2, season 2, whatever, is going to take the characters to Hoofington for one reason or another. And so we're gonna get the projects as well as eventually. Again, not currently, and we have to actually get there.
We'll see what happens then. So watch this space.
It's 27 plus episodes away. It could be years before I get there, especially at the current production rate.
Well, like I said, watch this space. We'll see where it goes. So you mentioned Project Eternity, sorry. That does bring up a question of which fictions are considered canon for the storyteller.
I get that question a lot. I think I tried to answer it in one of the first Rad Meter podcasts. It's the production podcast for Nuclear Horseman Studios. I tried to answer that question. It includes every fic that's considered a, quote, big fic. Even ones I haven't necessarily read through all the way, like Murky Number 7, Dead Tree, and I think a few others that I haven't read through that are now considered big fics, which the only requirement to be a big fic is that you have a page on EQD that specifically tracks your story. So there's like 8 stories now that are counted as big fics. So it definitely includes all the big fics. The original Fallout Equestria, Project Horizons, Heroes, Pink Eye, Murky Number 7, I think Better Days, and Dead Tree. It also includes all of the other stories in the series that includes that includes Better Days. So Merchants of Hope, Long Winter, any other future stories written by Gamma Decay and Sawyer. All of my fics are definitely going to be considered canon. Like I said, the epilogue of Hold the Pineapple does reference one of the characters traveling with a teller of stories. I wonder who that could be.
Gee, we'll never know.
It's a mystery. It's a complete mystery. It also includes some of my own personal headcanons on certain things, such as like mega spells and how pit bucks work and all this kind of stuff, because we do plan on covering those little minute details and kind of figuring out what we can figure out from existing lore and trying to explain it in a way that makes sense in a world that has magic.
Mm-hmm.
So
wait, you said Better Days is one of the big fics? I don't recall it having its own EQD page, but it's definitely a high quality work, and I loved reading it back then.
I don't know if it's Better Days that's counted or one of the other fics in Gamma Decay's stories. I know it's one of his fics, but oddly enough, not all of his fics are counted, which is always really weird when that happens. Also sequels to big fics that might exist, such as, like I said, Gamma Decay's continuing stories.
Long Winter?
Long Winter was before Better Days.
Oh, right.
Chronologically,
my bad.
It may have been written after, but chronologically speaking. like I'm counting homelands. I do eventually plan on bringing the storyteller to Zebraca. Not sure when that'll happen. There's a lot.
That's probably gonna be a very long way away.
There's a lot to cover in the Equestrian Wasteland before we decide to delve into the Zebretian Wasteland.
There's at least a decade's worth of content that you've suggested thus far.
Yeah, we have. I can be a bit of a leaky faucet, so I'm trying not to spoil too much, especially because plans might change between now and when things actually release. But each season, as I'm referring to them, are going to primarily focus on a certain big fic lore, with maybe 1 or 2 episodes solely dedicated to my own headcanon.
Okay.
So the first season will cover a lot of. We'll try to stick to a lot of the original story by K-Cat, with subsequent seasons covering things like Project Horizons and Heroes and Pink Eyes and whatnot.
All right. So we will see.
And yeah, that all depends on if this actually gets released. Production has been slow.
Well, it wouldn't be a Fall to Christia fan work if it didn't have problems.
I guess you're right.
BG, I believe you had some questions. I think this seems like a logical place to insert them.
I mean, yeah, having this sort of major, accord with other authors, it reminds me of a certain other group of Fall Equestria authors who considered each other's fics to be canon to one another. Are you aware of several other such groups? Because for this particular example would be, for example, Fall Equestria, Outlaw, Dark Shores, and Frozen Skies sort of sharing a canon and having, the occasional little cameo of each other's characters. So would you be familiar with other such groups?
So I actually have gotten permission from Gamma Decay for Icarus. There actually is a cameo of Storm Rider and Ficha, and even I think a few other characters in Icarus. I asked him, and if he wasn't so busy, when I actually do get around to writing it, I definitely confer with him to make sure everything works well in the timeline, because Icarus in Gamma Decay and Sawyer's timeline takes place, I think, after Long Winter, but before Better Days, because at the time I hadn't read Better Days. Now I have, so technically I could push it forward in the timeline if I wanted to, but then I couldn't use Storm Rider. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, for reasons. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. But I do plan on maybe having a storyteller episode on Storm Rider, maybe kind of coupling it together with other major heroes of the Wastes, and maybe try to bring in a lot more other fics. I'm also considering including Dice Warwick's canon, to maybe kind of focus on his various pirate raider factions that are pony versus zebra pirates kind of thing. From his fics, which I've only read I think 1 or 2 of his, and it's very interesting. But he has very different ideas on Tartarus than I did, so I don't know if our fics will mesh. But I definitely like, and I might even include lore from fics that do kind of contradict. Because a common theme is that a lot of narrators' stories could qualify as an unreliable narrator, whether implicitly implied their story was edited by other people, hence Little Pip, the Twilight Society, what did they change? Or Blackjack, so many mental mess-ups that how could she get anything straight? And stuff like that. So any inconsistencies, and I can't speak today, any inconsistencies could easily be explained away as an unreliable narrator or inaccurate information or something. So I'm I don't want to get too crazy and like include every Fallout Equestria fic out there, because there are some that I really enjoyed reading, such as Starlight, but wouldn't work if I include things like Project Horizons because of their varying use of Discord. So
I can partially take this. Sorry, may I step in? So I can partially take this as something of making a unified theory of everything within the FOE universe.
Well, actually, a friend of mine is trying to do that even a more grander scale, to make a sort of thing like that. Mine might be more of a smaller scale, like just fics I've read for the most part. Like, to officially answer the question, we have the big 8 current fics, and some of their various sequels / prequels that were not included as big fics, my own fics, and a little sprinkling of headcanon. Let's just say that is what is canon to the storyteller.
All right. Well, we'll keep this all in mind, and I hope you, the audience, do tune in to this when the next episode is released. But moving on. Now here are some more
obligatory. When that was going to happen. I wish I could say exactly when the next episode of the Storyteller was to be released, but I don't know at this point.
Yes. Now comes some more obligatory questions. How did you get into MLP and, by extension, FOE?
Okay, I actually looked this up because I have specific dates here. So back when I was in high school, back in the distant year of like 2009 to 2013, long time ago. I had a couple friends who, including my best friend, who in my pony comic reviews plays the character of Cool Man Stan. Anyways, including my best friend, who watched the show. A few of them were like, they're really huge fans of the show. Were brave enough to wear a Fluttershy shirt to high school, and didn't really mind getting teased for it, kind of thing. And so I just, because I had no one else to sit with at lunch, I sat with them at lunch, and they convinced me to consider My Little Pony as a show to eventually watch, and I put it on my ever-growing list of shows to watch, not really planning to get to it anytime soon. Fast forward to 2014, I'm a bored college student, and specifically around March 17th, 2014, I have that documented because I was a daily vlogger at the time, so I have the specific date. I started watching it. I think I binged seasons 1 through 3 and half of season 4 that had been released at the time. And I don't know if I actually considered myself a brony, but I remember in the vlog, which I guess I can post a link in the comment section when you post this on YouTube or whatever, for the specific vlog on my currently dead vlogging channel. I basically say, I guess I'm considered a brony now, but I probably wouldn't have considered myself a brony for another couple weeks after finding the Burnalysis community, deciding I'm going to review the MLP comics that no one's covering, and that's how Equestria was made. Maybe next time I'll tell you how I got into the brony fandom.
All right.
As far as Fallout Equestria, it definitely came down to a similar, I was bored. I think this had more of a catalyst, though, than that. I think I was watching Dr. Wolf videos, and he had a video that reviewed the Fallout Equestria. I'm like, oh, I like Fallout, and I like ponies. Maybe I'll like this. And so I found originally Craze Ramblings audiobook. And
everyone loves Craze Ramblings. Shame our boy had to leave.
I actually prefer Visual Ponies one because he has tries to do various voices versus a solid monotone. And Visual Pony has actually gotten through Project Horizons, unlike Craze Ramblings.
Yeah, but I don't blame Craze Ramblings for that, because he's trying to be a VA.
Yeah.
And that takes time and dedication. So I do not blame him. And one thing about Visual Pony, which I find very irritating, is I get that English is not his first language. That's fine. I'm not mad about him doing this. I'm mad that no one decided to check him or tell him that this was incorrect for the entirety of the time.
What?
He got an awful lot of words incorrect.
Yeah.
Towards the later end of those fics, he would keep referring to a character called Chicanery. That's the character's actual name, Chicanery, as chicanery.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, definitely comes to the fact that English isn't his first language. So I ignored that. It's also and I still enjoyed it, and such, and so I was able to ignore things like that. And I think he also pronounced a few other things that I noticed incorrectly. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair, yeah, English has some, super inconsistent pronunciation, especially with all the loan words.
When it comes to, here's the thing, I was learning Spanish. This is what my teacher said that was really funny. In Spanish, or in a lot of languages, not just Spanish, you have the rule and maybe one or two exceptions. Then English, you have the rule and pretty much everything's the exception. Because I before E, except after C, or when it sounds like A, as in neighbor and way. And on weekends and holidays, and you'll always be wrong, no matter what you say.
Thanks for that quote there. Yeah, I'm aware of that rule, that I before E, except after C. No, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, it's the other way around. It's...
For those who don't know, that was a Brian Regan quote. He's a comedian.
Yes. Besides that bit of a wandering there.
Yeah.
Let's try and get back to the main point.
Yeah. So basically, I listened to Craig's ramblings. Got through all of what he had of Project Horizons. Was upset that he didn't finish it. Discovered Visual Pony. I ended up probably listening to the original fic over again. I ended up the only fic I've actually sat down and read was Pink Eyes, because I was in the middle of a power outage, and there is not currently a good reading of it until, again, Visual Pony made one. There probably were others, but I couldn't find them. Like, they're either like speech to text or like had bad audio and was hard to listen to. So I it kind of just went snowballed from there. I ended up starting Ballad of a Crystal Pony, canceling it, starting while I was writing Ballad of a Crystal Pony, I started writing Adrift, but ended up canceling them both. Apocalypse Paralysis canceled, and then it kind of just snowballed from I'm bored, let's check this out. Basically, for both My Little Pony and Fall Equestria, it's like boredom. Boredom is the reason I got into it.
Boredom. Okay, seems as good a reason as any. But anywho, moving on. Let's have the more contentious question I had here first. What was the weirdest fic you've ever read? It could be weird in a meta sense, or just how it was written, or the subject material, whatever you want to define it as.
Well, I mean, meta speaking, my fics, I definitely like the uniqueness of my fics, but that's more of a biased opinion. Let's think of one that's not considering my own. Yeah, not considering my own fics. I really enjoyed Gamma Decay's fic. It was a one shot, which actually inspired the trip, which is my own one shot. It's kind of my favorite sort of not often used trope of the recursive fic. The beginning is the end is the beginning kind of thing. I think it was Gamma's fic called Forsaken. It's about a robot filly trying to find what happened in the wake of the apocalypse, and it's just like it. And like I said, unfortunately, going into it knowing it's a recursive fic kind of ruin it, but it definitely was interesting to have that whole the end is the beginning and it kind of just continually repeats itself. Which again inspired the idea of the trip, which it's in itself is recursive.
All right. Next question. How healthy do you feel the FOE fandom is right now, and where do you think it's going in general?
Now, the FOE fandom definitely seems in a better place than the greater My Little Pony fandom. No offense to the My Little Pony fandom. We have a lot of people jumping ship to the furry fandom if they weren't already there.
I'm going to pick a bit of a hot take here. I say this as a member of the MLP fandom. We were just furries the entire time. The game was rigged from the start.
I guess. I don't. It all comes to self-identification. I don't necessarily identify as a furry. My pony Sona is not a fursona as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, yeah, I guess there is some credence to the we are just diet furries kind of thing.
Furries with notably less drama.
You clearly haven't existed in the Burnalysis community. There's a lot of
you clearly haven't been in the deep part of the furry community.
Anyways, I definitely think the Fall Equestria fandom is going a bit stronger than the My Little Pony in general fandom. I definitely think the fandom both which I guess you could say they're the same fandom, but not really. Both fandoms are definitely gonna exist for a long time, much like Trekkies did without any like actual content. And then eventually Hasbro will make their Gen 5 or Gen 4.5, and we'll either love it or hate it, and we'll see what happens. So, I mean, I definitely think it's in a good place. It's definitely smaller than its peak back in like 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, whatever. But I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Even if people do jump ship to, like I said, to the furry fandom, they could still make content that could be considered pony content, even if they are all officially now a furry tuber kind of thing.
Suppose so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can be in multiple fandoms. I'm part of the Doctor. I'm part of the Doctor Who fandom. I'm part of the Arrowverse. I like to include Flash in there, but people don't say that's the right name for it. I'm part of the Arrowverse fandom. I'm part of BoJack Horseman fandom. Like, you can be part of multiple fandoms, and so even if like My Little Pony becomes slightly less prominent, I definitely think that the fandoms are in good places to not completely die out.
All right. Well, final question before we break for a short commercial break.
Commercials?
Sort of. You'll see maybe if you watch the stream while we're resting our voices and such.
Okie dokie.
What is your favorite fic and why? Not including your own works, of course. No shameless plugging at this point.
Dang it! Well, there goes my first. How many fics do I have? Like 5 or 6 options. See what. Well, I mean, like I said, Forsaken's pretty good. I'm definitely in a minority opinion on this, but I actually like Project Horizons. But like my absolute favorite fic, it's definitely a tie between the original and Pink Eyes, because Puppy Smiles is the like second most cutest abomination next to Nuclear Horseman Studios mascot.
Yeah, she's pretty cute. Yeah, she's.
I know Megaspell is so cute. Am I right? Sorry, I know you probably have no clue who I'm talking about.
I know who you're on about. I've seen the mascot. Don't know much about the mascot. Maybe we can discuss that in our little break. But
okay, I was joking. Puppy Smiles is you'll die of cuteness before you die of the necromantic pink cloud inside her suit.
Before she attempts to kill you with a small rock.
Yes. So a tie between the original fic and Puppy Smiles fic favorites. And Forsaken. Forsaken's pretty good too. Dang it, I can't choose. All 3 of them. And then all my fics, but you said I couldn't include, so.
Yes, no, not including your own fix. You're not allowed to do that. You can't selflessly plug unless I tell you to.
Screw the rules.
Well,
Screw the rules. I have blue hair.
shush you. Don't let me get the cudgel news on you now. Now, we will have a short commercial break from our sponsor, Sparkle. Sorry, not Sparkle Cola. They'll be later in the show. No, you're right. It's Sparkle Cola. Sparkle Cola is up first. Hope you all have a good short break. We'll be back shortly.
There's a reason Sparkle Cola has remained Equestria's most popular beverage since it was first introduced to the public. Not just its refreshing taste, but also because Sparkle Cola uses only the finest equestrian ingredients. And we add just the faintest hint of magic for that refined flavor you can only get from an ice-cold Sparkle Cola. Because we're a company you can trust, ran by real equestrians, you can be sure that Sparkle Cola's spectacular taste just can't be beat. And for every Sparkle Cola you buy, 1 bit goes to supporting our mares and stallions in uniform. So sit back and enjoy the great equestrian taste of Sparkle Cola. Sparkle Cola. What you want is a spark.
Right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Post-Apoc Horse Talk. Now we are walking right on into our favourite part of the show, lore and discussion. So for the first topic of the night is a discussion topic that we've had before. Vehicles in FOE. It's a very broad topic, I know. So, I haven't actually read all of the works that you've had. How have you handled vehicles in your fix? And
I thought you said, maybe it was your accent, but I thought you said miracles. I was so confused. Vehicles makes a lot more sense.
Miracles? When do we let miracles wander in here?
I don't know. I misheard what you said. But as far as vehicles in, I did have in Icarus briefly. The characters were able to be in a Pinkie Pie blimp that was probably bigger on the inside than the outside because Pinkie Pie. Don't question it. Although it was shot down by an Enclave bird, but Vertibuck or whatever, so and it might make its return despite being shot down and exploding. They shall rebuild it, hopefully. I also there's the obvious of like the other various cloud ships that make their appearance. But I don't know. My most of my fics involve a character walking from point A to point B. They don't involve them driving. Or if they do, it's short-lived. Like whether the onset of the apocalypse causes it to crash, or spoiler alert for the trip, or it gets blown up for story reasons, a la Icarus. So I haven't really explored them. They definitely are a form of fast travel. So it's like if you have a fic that spans a large area, vehicles do function as good ways to have sort of fast travel be a thing, which was commonly used in the original fic with their
Sky Bandit.
The Sky Bandit. So I mean, if you need to get them long distances really fast, use a vehicle. Just be aware that it's canonically proven, even in Fallout, even the regular Fallout world, that most vehicles that still exist are highly explosive. So don't get shot.
Well, I'm more interested in the idea of really what vehicles that were actually available pre and post war, because, well, we obviously know that. We know the reason why they don't exist in the Fallout games. It's because Bethesda are terrible and can't code for shit. That's the entirety of the reason.
I forgot one set of fix that was canon to the storyteller. Anything made by East Corp. There, I said it.
Right.
If it weren't for East Corp, the storyteller series wouldn't exist. So I try to, if I can, include their canon. Sorry, I just remembered that I forgot to mention that. Back to the topic at hand, or hoof, or whatever.
Well, what do you think was kind of available to everyone before the war? Like, do you think cars are a part of the canon?
In Gamma Decay's Merchants of Hope, and even to a lesser extent, Long Winter, they have the Marauder, which is kind of a spark battery powered automated land chariot, kind of modeled after your classic sports car kind of thing. Which, according to the canon that they used, it was like it wasn't as popular as sky chariots, and Pegasi flown vehicles and Earth Pony pulled vehicles. Like, it didn't catch on. Even gasoline, even briefly touched upon gasoline existing in My Little Pony universe, but again, it didn't catch on as well as spark generators and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, this does bring up something in Homelands, which is a very tiny spoiler for Homelands. They do briefly find some steam tractors. Doesn't seem beyond the realms of possibility that equestrians might have steam-powered vehicles. Maybe not necessarily with coal. Maybe they have some sort of primitive electric generator to boil the water. But regardless, it seems entirely possible that steam would be a usable means of power, at least in the early part of the war.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh. Don't do stuff in the chat. You'll distract yourself. I feel like went without saying.
I forgot I was logged into my non-pony account. See the stream.
Anyway,
I'll stop paying attention. I'll switch back to Discord and stop paying attention to the chat again.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'll remember to remind every new visiting guest of that. Anyway,
but the chat is fun.
Yes, chat is fun, but no chat for you. Moving on. So, I posed a quandary to you before you wandered off into the chat.
Okay, yes. The Steam vehicles. I could see that being a thing. Again, Homelands was Zebraca, and speaking of Zebraca, in Fallout lore, China is apparently a smoking crater in the ground. So it's just surprising that Somber decided, Zebraca wasn't necessarily blown to shit. It had a governmental collapse apocalypse versus a nuclear one. So it's kind of an interesting take. But steam tractors definitely seem within the realm of possibility. I mean, they had tanks, if you include canon from Project Horizons.
Yeah, definitely.
And even they had cloud ships. So I mean, there's advanced technology, but there could also be equally primitive technology, steampunk style.
Yeah, I think that is one of the joys of this.
Sorry, I interrupted.
This is probably one of the joys of Fallout Equestria. Pretty much any kind of tech level kind of fits.
Yep. Like you have like a steam, as long as you have a good explanation for it, like you could have it, oh, this character like is self-taught as a self-taught engineer, and so they built this like steam powered vehicle from the housing of some sky chariot that they encountered, or in the case of the actual project Fallout Equestria fic, they found this mostly intact Sky Bandit. It just needed one part, and then boom, it works. So it's like it has to work. It can't be like, oh no, what are we ever gonna do? We're trapped in the middle of nowhere. Oh hey, look, a working vehicle. How convenient.
Like any working vehicle would either have been A, stripped for parts, or B, in the hooves of someone who really wanted that vehicle and either took it at gunpoint or paid an exorbitant amount of money for it.
Yep. So it's like it depends on how you introduce it. An easy way, since Derpy has existed for over 200 years, an easy way to have a vehicle in your fic is just have the character know Ditsy Do and have her give them a ride. I mean, work for Storm Rider, it can work for any pony.
Yeah, I suppose. But what other vehicles do you think exist in the universe? So we discussed.
Well,
Sorry, carry on.
No, I keep interrupting. Sorry.
So
bad habit.
So it's possible that steam vehicles may exist, and we know that certain sky vehicles exist, and those are powered by relatively known concepts within the universe. Like I think they're powered by clouds, effectively.
The sky chariots, like the Sky Bandit, I think used a spark battery to kind of activate some sort of talisman of sorts that made it effectively weightless.
Yeah, basically, like you could argue it is effectively a null gravity field around the around the Sky
which can then be pulled by a Pegasus. They're definitely, and then the sky ships, I think. The cloud ships, I think that they had cloud generators that kind of kept them on the clouds. Like they could, if the clouds exist, they can float on top of the clouds. But if the clouds don't exist, like if they go below the clouds, they generate their own cloud, kind of thing. I think that's how it works. So I mean, yeah, there's those. There's the Griffin Chasers. I
found that more of a meme than anything else, but yeah, they exist.
They were used in the main fic, and as far as any fic is canon.
It's so stupid, though. It's so stupid. Why,
it's
though?
Pinkie Pie, don't question it. It's Pinkie Pie, don't question it. Because the original Griffin Chaser was based off of Pinkie Pie's weird contraption from Griffin the Brush Off.
I know, but why? What? That can't work.
Because Earth Pony stubbornness. They want to fly too. If they have to pedal,
you flighty bastards will come up there.
If the Earth Ponies have to pedal the pony power to poach, I'm trying to make an alliteration here, to poach specific Pegasus powers, more power to them.
It seems that we've
power, poach specific pedal. I can't speak.
It seems that Earth Ponies take from the Chicken Run universe of how to fly.
I mean, Earth Ponies made ballistic weaponry. Earth Ponies made power armor. Earth Ponies are pretty damn important, and can just completely just like, because they're the least magical race. No offense to ponies out there, they have to work harder to be on the same playing field as a unicorn or Pegasus. So,
oh yeah, I don't disagree with that statement. Hashtag Red Eye was right.
Okay. Yes, sure. Build Equestria on the back. Totally a good thing.
That's a joke.
I know.
But
What
yeah,
did I just get whooshed? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a fair few of them that could work, I imagine. But I don't think that petrol is a thing that exists. Like Gamma DK mentioned it, but
he
that doesn't
mentioned it as
seem
it wasn't as efficient or as popular. So like I think like there's like one company that made a few gas stations and then kind of went bankrupt. Like there definitely isn't really much. The only like gas powered item again was another gamma decay thing, and it was like mining equipment that was retrofitted to allow the alcohol as its power source instead of gas, even though they're a couple molecules apart anyways. So whatever.
I mean, you can run like modern cars on alcohol. Like I've seen a modern like Chrysler engine run on relatively pure alcohol.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not out of the question of possibility. It just seems like in Fallout Question universe, if you have anything that on gas, you could easily make it run on magic or alcohol.
Why would you need to use this horrible, dirty burning fossil fuel when you've got literal pollutionless magic?
I mean, not 100% pollution free because when a spark battery is out of juice, you just kind of throw it away. It's not really useful anymore. So I mean, it has its own
that's not necessarily
environmental impact.
Yeah, but the thing is that as far as I'm aware, like there's no reason why you couldn't recharge those. Like I don't think it's suggested that you can recharge them.
Yeah, and also there's apparently generators that can literally hook a unicorn horn up to them and siphon power until they get magical burnout.
The chat brings up a question. Well, I believe we did actually answer that earlier. We do think that tanks are canon. At least my personal headcanon is before power armor became a thing, the equestrians used tanks, and so did the zebras. The equestrian tanks were not very good.
Yeah, and also even if they weren't canon during the war, which I like to think that they probably were to some extent on both sides, the Pegasi had, and among their cloud ship fleet, there's those tortoise ships that are basically cloud cannons, cloud tanks.
I tend to use like World War II era tanks.
And you know what the best reasoning behind that why tanks and weaponry are of the sort are canon. I mean, in the actual show, Rainbow Dash has a pet named Tank. How could she name it Tank if tanks didn't exist?
I mean, you could argue that since the word tank developed literally from boiler tanks, that's what they thought it looked like, you could reasonably make the assumption she's referring to that.
Okay, then how come when she's singing about which is the best pet, she wants them to be fast as a bullet?
Okay, I can't answer that one. The only thing I can answer that one. Slings.
All right, fine. And random sort of stupid headcanon. I still think they could be possible. Again, I like Project Horizons, at least up until the epilogue. Not a huge fan of the epilogue. It sets too much in stone. But in that thing, there exists a zebra tank, which I won't spoil who's operating that tank in case people want to slog through that story at some point.
And believe you me, friends listening out there, it is a slog. One fucking hell of a slog. Oh boy, is it a slog.
Sumber saw the over 6 million words of Fallout Equestria and goes, "Hold my wild Pegasus."
Yep.
Made his own story with literally blackjack and liquor.
Actually, and hookers too.
And hookers, yes.
Blackjack, liquor, and hookers. Yep, it's all in there.
Yep.
But yeah, going briefly back to tanks. Generally, I assume that basically they're World War II era tanks. Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah,
I would definitely say that the Sherman Firefly was a thing.
Even if they weren't like as magically powered as we're probably picturing them, they could just be like this giant like metal armor that 4 to 5 ponies kind of just using, like kind of just sit inside, and they're kind of like a Flintstones-esque kind of thing. They're just walking inside this giant metal thing, that metal protective unit that has a giant FU gun on it. Like it could be as simple as that.
I imagine I actually reasonably would say that like earlier question tanks probably were that. Pretty much a metal hull with an Earth Pony crew inside, just plodding towards the enemy.
I mean, it would be very slow, and maybe there was some primitively magical enhancement to kind of make it so it wasn't as heavy to move. But
I mean, I don't think Earth Ponies need it, because remember, they pulled a train with the engine still attached.
That's true.
I don't want to ruin that point there, but engines need coal and they can move. They do this magical thing called moving with locomotion.
Yeah,
You don't need to pull it.
You're gonna get into the same confusion that little Pip got over the fact that trains use coal. Just don't think about it.
Like, this actually reminds me of another fic where someone had the absolute brainwave idea to use wood.
Oh my god.
It was a brainwave idea. Trains can burn wood.
It's big brain time. Big brain time.
It may not work as well as coal, but it works.
Yeah. Big brain time.
But yeah, that does remind me that on that point that you also mentioned that like maybe the earliest tanks were Flintstone-esque armored suits with a fuck-off gun in them. That reminds me of, if anyone here remembers Avatar, The Last Airbender, not the terrible movie, but the TV series.
The actual good TV show and the moderately okay sequel show.
Yeah, the Earth Kingdom had tanks. Basically, they were like big stone caterpillars where they would basically move over units of Fire Nation troops and just beat the shit out of them safely inside.
Yeah, because they could use the Earth they could move the Earth to move along.
That's kind of half what I was thinking. Like, the earliest equestrian tanks were literally just Fred Flintstone guys with clubs inside. They would just move it towards the zebras and just club them, pull them inside and club them to death.
Because ballistic weaponry in the Fallout Equestrian universe seemed to be a pretty early on invention, even before the war became a thing. With magic weaponry kind of being magic powered guns kind of being a later addition. So I feel like they could put a pretty large artillery cannon even on the primitive walking powered tanks.
Like, it would probably be as simple as,
you just have maybe like 4 ponies walking to be the movement of the tank, and maybe one person controlling the direction and also loading and firing the gun.
I want to point out that this is another discussion point I think should be brought up at some point. People don't quite grasp just the speed of technological ingenuity that took place in all that.
I mentioned it in the first episode of the Storyteller. I have to say that they industrialized at an alarming rate.
Alarming would put it mildly, in my honest opinion, because they basically went from the dawn of gunpowder to beyond the atomic age in about 30 years.
Yeah, actually, that is a contentious issue. How long was the war? I actually that's like the one question I can't exactly answer. I know it was over 10. I know the ministries existed for about 10 to 15 years, But prior to that, how long was the war? Actually, I feel
I generally go for about 30 years.
It's a pretty major gap in my knowledge of the lore. I try to avoid giving a concrete answer to how long the war was because I actually didn't know. I guess I could have asked any of the various lore experts that are on my project, but I feel like that invalidates me as a lore. I don't know how long the war actually was.
That's because the question was never answered, as far as I can tell. As far as I remember, no, neither of the two biggest fics out there ever answered that question precisely how long it was. So we know that there was a long length of time where they were at war with the ministries, because we know 100% that the ministry mayors were old by the end of it.
Yeah, and
we don't know precisely how old, but graying.
Yeah, and there's some anachronisms in Project Horizons with Steel Hooves having power armor before Big Mac's death.
Was that a thing?
I feel like he was described as wearing power armor. Big Mac kicked the bucket via sniper shot to the chest. But maybe he just had bulky armor of some kind throughout all his military career. Maybe it wasn't power armor per se, like maybe it was heavy metal armor or something. But
I'm not actually.
Like may have been an anachronism, or maybe I was because of Steelhooves' prominence in the original fic, him being included, even if it was in flashback. In Project Horizon, I just pictured him in full metal power armor, even though it probably wasn't.
It's possible.
Probably like some heavy combat armor of sorts.
Here's a question. I actually want to ask this of the chat member who seems to be very active tonight, which I do thank you very much for, Mister. But how long was the war in original Fallout? Because if in the absence of another answer, I'd say that's a fair reason to go with that one.
How long was the Great War in Fallout Equestria? Well, regular Fallout? Well, the actual conflict known as the Great War was only about like an hour long. Everything got blown to shit pretty quickly.
I'm meaning more with the conflict with China.
The resource wars and the cold that led to the actual quote Great War that lasted several hours in the morning of like sometime in October. I think October 23rd or something like that.
Yeah, October 23rd.
It's like the actual war was everything was blown to shit in under an hour. Or two, or whatever. But the actual like leading up to it, like all the resource wars prior to that were less touched upon, were probably a decade, maybe more.
I'm not sure when the hostilities began with that. I think it might be a bit longer than that.
There's a chunk of time. I'm not as well versed in Fallout specific lore, but I definitely know there's a portion of time in the Fallout timeline that was like the resource wars, where every country kind of just went to war with each other over the dwindling resources, which led to the whole escalation of the nuclear arms, leading to the like several hours long quote Great War that ended ended with a bang. I was saying not with a bang, but with, to quote a song or whatever, but like no, it's definitely ended in a pretty big bang. Several actually. So like I feel like if you really want to refer to the Fallout timeline, the actual Great War for Fallout Equestria would be the several hour long conflict right on the final day, which might be long. Maybe it was more of an entire morning, because you have the explosion in Manhattan, the explosion at Maripony, the explosion in Philly, possible explosions in the Hoof. Hoof goes on lockdown. Innervation becomes a thing. And then the first strike was Cloudsdale, Manhattan, Maripony, Philadelphia, Canterlot, with Canterlot being the final one to actually fall because of how slow it took Pink Cloud to kill everyone, or Ghoulify. So I feel like even comparatively, the Fallout Equestria's equivalent of the several hour-long conflict for the actual Great War would probably be like 3-4 hours. But the conflict leading up to that would be anywhere from 10 to 30 years.
So, from what I can tell here, this is the point where actual wars start being declared over resources. So I'm going to mark this as the point, at least in the Fallout timeline, when hostilities began, and that was in 2060.
Oh, it looks like in the real world timeline, that'll happen in 20. I'm kidding. World War III is not going to be a thing. People need to stop panicking.
But yeah, I generally put the war, just so there's enough time to even unreasonably put all that technology to good use, is about 30 to 40 years, probably a bit longer. I would have said probably before Luna takes over about 20 years, and then afterwards 10 to 15 years.
I mean, that sounds about right. I mean,
because
the artist on my project, or as we refer to him, Art Bun Bun, he has I think he thinks that like in his interpretation, either before Luna or after Luna, which is the only like point of contention between us as far as what's counted as canon, which is why his own project he was working on was going to kind of be separate from the storyteller, because he considers the war taking longer. But like it was never officially mentioned, and you could probably message either, well, maybe not Somber, because you could probably message Somber. He's less. As far as like who created it, it would definitely be K-Cat. So you could ask K-Cat over like FimFiction, and you might get a response. Or you can ask Somber, just because Somber had a lot of contact with K-Cat when writing his fic.
People could generally ask, but I don't think K-Cat's going to answer anyone anymore.
Actually, I actually did message K-Cat. Funny story. Well, not really funny, but like interesting story. Early concepts for the Storyteller series were kind of going to be a more animatic style. We would actually have characters kind of on screen. We designed most of the main characters, gave them a couple poses, and we're working on backgrounds and stuff, but it ended up being too expensive. But one of the characters we needed designed was, in the context of our series, Elder Crossroads, or Star Paladin Crossroads, I think, in the actual fic, because she's never described out of her armor at all in the entire fic. She's just her head is shown, so we know that she has brown coat, blonde hair, and I think orange eyes. Something was described about her eyes, but she's never described out of her armor to the point where you get a definitive cutie mark. And I went right to the source. I sent a message on FimFiction to K-Cat. Hey, I'm doing this series, and we want to show Elder Crossroads. What's her cutie mark? And K-Cat was like, I never actually thought about one for Elder Crossroads, or for Crossroads in general. I never really thought about it because she's never out of her armor for any time she's in the fic. Go with whatever you want. And so I brought that back to the artist, and I think what he ended up settling on was like a footlocker with some like crossroads kind of symbolism to the whole like Devil's Deal at a Crossroad kind of thing. It was definitely an interesting cutie mark, and I think it exists on our DeviantArt if you want to see the pictures of Crossroads.
Grab that link, we can share it in the chat. I think they'd much appreciate that.
Yeah, and the funny thing was, up until that point, there had been no other Crossroads art. No one cared about Crossroads enough to have art of her until that point.
That's kind of sad, I'll be honest.
Like the page on the wiki for Crossroads is like so like lacking compared to any other major character in any fic. I kind of feel bad. Crossroads is a fun character. Got Nuclear Horseman Studios, gallery. Let me just narrate me going through this.
So
the
Yeah.
The image of her sitting is where you get the best picture of the Foot Locker cutie mark. So I'm gonna pop that one into the chat, I guess. Or I'll pop it into the Discord chat. You can pop it into the stream chat. I don't know if I can share links. Sometimes the host can share links, but people watching can't.
Well, either me or BG can share it, yeah. But I'll just pop it in.
I'll take care of that.
Oh, you can do it then.
Yeah,
but
so it's...
Anywho, I think we've thoroughly gone through that topic and an extra topic I didn't intend to go into.
Yeah, and I know. I'm just saying in general, like, you could probably contact KCAT and they actually might respond. Again, that was like over like 2 years ago that I messaged them, so I'm not entirely sure if they'll still respond, but you never know.
All right. Well, moving on to our next discussion point of the night. This was one that was discussed previously too. Pre-war food. How is there so much, and how did it last this long?
A fuck ton of preservatives.
As far as I understand, I don't think that was mentioned, but
I think I remember in the chapter Pip was like put off by eating this 200-year-old food until she sees like Calamity eating it as well, and it's like, guess it's okay.
I mean, my answer. Sorry, you carry on.
I keep interrupting. I'm really sorry about that.
It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Chock full of enough preservatives to keep your stomach and your digestive system preserved long after the rest of your body has rotted away.
I want to just point out that there is, unlike what everyone believes there is a end point to how long canned food can stay good for.
Oh yeah, I know that's definitely true. But I think in a world where magic exists, probably not.
That would have been my go-to answer. I would have gone to the answer that the cans are just enchanted with a preserve spell. So the content, as long as the seal remains intact, is good.
Yeah, pretty much.
That would have been my go-to answer. But that doesn't explain stuff like boxed food. So Blamco mac and cheese.
Maybe they have the same enchantment on the box.
I mean, sure, but the box is much more easy to break.
I mean, if every single saddlebag can be kind of enchanted with the Pinkie Pie space enchantment, then why can't every box and can be enchanted with preservatives?
I suppose so, but I'm just thinking that boxes break easily. Because I'm just saying that you probably just, if it falls off a shelf a bit too hard, the contents will start to rot.
When it comes to mac and cheese, it's usually pasta with cheese. So I mean, yeah, the cheese part of it might go bad a lot quicker, but pasta.
Yeah, pasta stays good forever, pretty much, as long as it stays dry.
Pasta stays good for quite a bit of time. So maybe if they're eating Blanco mac and cheese, I don't know what the Fallout Equestria equivalent of that is.
It's again from Blamco, but it's Big Mac and cheese. I actually had a bit of a headcanon that they actually got Big Mac in for the advertisement, and go.
Could be interesting.
Hey there, I'm Big Mac of Macintosh's Marauders, and I'm now advertising this. This is Blamco Big Mac and cheese, and it's my favorite mac and cheese variety. Yup.
Yeah, that would work. And I mean, when it comes to macaroni and fake powdered cheese, that does last quite a lot of time. So that could also be explained just like pasta lasts a long time, and you have a fake cheese substitute that might not even be real cheese that could last a long time. So I mean, we're talking about the minutia of a fiction crossover universe. So I think especially one that has magic in it. So it could always be explained away as the wizard did it.
Yeah, well, that answers the question of why it's still around, or at least like it's still good to eat. But it doesn't answer the question of why there is a quantity that is so high right now.
Some pony discovered a factory and started making more.
I mean, I suppose.
Apparently Huffington has a bunch of factories buried beneath it that that the one of the antagonists of Project Horizons had access to and was giving like freshly made sugar apple bombs and other products out. So it's not out of the ordinary that it would.
I mean, it's not impossible.
There could be new stuff made if you find a working factory.
I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I just question whether or not people could work together enough for long enough to actually produce enough food. On the simple grounds that as soon as someone discovers that there's now a working factory, someone's going to want that.
True. It's one of those things that it was a game mechanic that they transferred to the story, and oftentimes they kind of the game mechanics get kind of weird, especially like you have the whole like freezing time aspect of SATS, and it's like that. So it's just one of those game mechanics that in Fallout games you would find food pretty much everywhere in places that even didn't really logically make sense or whatever. And so when transported to Fallout Equestria, that's just how it is. Apparently there's small quantities of undiscovered food in various abandoned buildings across Equestria. That, or if you go with the possibility that Discord is going around putting random amounts of caps and such in cabinets and drawers.
I mean,
Maybe it's Discord.
Again, that's possible. It's Discord. You don't have to give a reason for why he does things.
Although taking into account Project Horizons and their use of Discord, that wouldn't necessarily make as much sense.
Well, Discord is one of those things that even if his body is in one place, you can't be 100% certain he's actually there.
Valid point.
You can't be 100% certain that Discord isn't in like two places at the same time or in multiple places at the same time.
I mean,
because he's Discord. He doesn't make any sense to anybody anywhere.
In fantasy worlds like D&D, there's even magical spells that can create food and water. So it's not outside the. It's not outside.
Sorry, you carry on. I keep trying to interrupt you too.
It's not outside the realm of possibility that some unicorn just has a create food spell.
I do want to point out that that kind of thing is very problematic for physics.
It's magic. You unfortunately, the laws of thermodynamics and the conservation of energy doesn't exist when you bring magic into the world.
The thing is that this is a world of magic science where the things make sense. Magic is a science that you can understand. So that brings me question if you can do that.
If a unicorn has the spell to create food, what they probably are doing is taking that food from an alternate universe.
I mean, sure, that seems more plausible than other answers I could have heard. But that does also raise the question of you now have extra-dimensional transport. Why aren't you using it for other things?
I don't know. I just like sci-fi and fantasy, so I'm obsessed with time travel and alternate universes. So in absence of an explanation, I'm like, sure, let's go with this as a possibility.
You know what? This rabbit hole is just going to get even more insane the longer we go. So let's try and just wrap this one up with a nice, neat bow right here before we wander into much more questionable lines of questioning about this.
Okay.
So the next topic for the night is Okay.
You keep saying night, and I'm sitting here, and it's like 4 p.m. and the sun's still up.
It's my night, okay?
Time zones. Okay, continue.
Yeah, the Gardens of Equestria is a thing, but that's a much, much later thing in the timeline, my friend. Let's not concern ourselves with that particular point.
And yeah, there's also farming is a thing that could happen as well.
Yeah, farming, but we're talking specifically like pre-war food. Like, I don't question that ponies could feed themselves. That seems a relatively easy question to answer. I'm questioning why there's so much pre-war stuff still here and still good.
Okay, well, we're gonna move on to the next topic because the rabbit hole is too large for this one.
Yes. So, do you think there were other units that went dashite during Operation Quarterize? Because there was that one ship during the Battle of Friendship City that, well, once they'd taken out the harborside defenses, they refused to keep shooting on civilians.
Yeah, under where the bridge staff usurped the the good commanding officer away and then ordered their troops back on board. Officer Red Glare, I believe.
Well, because unfortunately, like the Enclave military, it's canon across multiple fics, even a tons of side fics that they commonly lie, propagate, and it's not propagate. They propagate lies, and they use propaganda and all that kind of stuff to kind of think that every pony they encounter in the wasteland is a raider. Like it's even shown that the first settlements that the Enclave attacked were raider encampments, just to hammer it home to the fresh out of the first time combatants that were their military, because they might be part of the military, but do they really they don't have much conflict above the clouds, except with the Griffins and stuff like that. But so they had to show these fresh-faced and brand new naive troops that everybody on the ground is a savage individual, so they went after raiders. So it definitely seems like it hardened a whole bunch of them to the point where they believe every settlement is full of raiders. But some of them actually might have gone dashite, and it definitely it opens up an interesting set of circumstances where if another fic decides to start or take place during Cauterize, it could even show various entire regiments maybe going dashite when they find out that they've been lied to for all this year. Not only are there ponies in the ground, they're not all savage, they're not all diseased, they're actually no different than they are. The exception of a wing or a special bone on on the forehead, or the fact that they're strong. I don't know what's unique about Earth ponies.
Mind your step there, mister. You're
I hate to keep ragging on Earth ponies. I'm joking. I'm saying that there isn't. I keep saying this phrase, but it isn't outside the realm of possibility. Since it wasn't shown, doesn't mean it didn't happen. That upon encountering a non-raider settlement, some Pegasi might realize, well, the only difference between me and you is I have wings and you have a horn, or I have wings and you don't. You have any additional appendages. It's like we're really one and the same. Why am I against you? And maybe turned against their superiors. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's the problem with talking about the stuff without any real concrete things. Technically anything's possible since it's not possible. Intentional double negative there. Sorry for talking so much.
It's fine. This is the purpose of the show. It's all about talking. It's even got it in the name.
Okay. I stopped talking, and then you're not commenting at all. I'm like, oh, did I talk too much?
You're right. There's not much to say, but it's an interesting thought, at least.
Ready.
Rightio. Well, I believe there's enough time for one more topic before we move on to another break.
Sorry about that.
So
walk away from the middle of a podcast.
So there was almost certainly other groups of individuals, or rather other nations out there besides Zebrica and Equestria. Almost certainly. What do you think those groups of people would be. Like, we know the Yaks are a group of people out there, and technically the Kirins have their own society. Do you think any of them are big enough to be countries?
Actually, there's shout out to East Corp again. A lot of episodes of their Wasteland Survival Guide thing pointed to certain societies that exist, trying to bring in newer canon to Fallout Equestria, because Fallout Equestria officially split off at season 2, but doesn't necessarily mean these other groups that have been introduced since don't exist. And so it's actually a fairly interesting concept that for like the hippogriffs and the sea pony of Mount Eris kind of thing. There's a whole episode that they had about, I think it was like they called it like Mar Harbor, kind of basing it off of Far Harbor and stuff like that, where there actually is a sort of like still existing hippogriff population somewhere on or around Mount Eris. But that also raises the question, what happened to the Storm King?
Well, it's almost certainly that the Griffins had their own nation or nations, because where do all the Griffins come from otherwise?
They just magically there's a spawn there's a mob generator set up somewhere, and it spawned a random Griffin mob one time.
And almost certainly the Minotaurs have their own nation, because, well, as far as I'm aware, there's only been the one Minotaur we've ever seen, and that was Ironwill, unless there was another one mentioned and I missed it.
There wasn't any in the actual canon series, but in Project Horizons there was Ironwill. Sorry, not Ironwill. Pain Train.
Yeah.
It's let's see. There's another. And then I know that Pain Train mentioned a whole like race. I got an email. Cool. My computer's just acting up all over the place. That's what that noise was.
Right.
Anyways, so the Pain Train, I believe, mentioned that there was a whole like society of that joined the zebra side of the war, I think, because like the Minotaurs joined the pony side, or the other way around. And in Homelands, it's there's a lot of diverse creatures that Somber created, including like gargoyles, or like dragon-like creatures that can turn to stone at will. A sort of bigger, dumber version of like diamond dogs that had really thick hides that weren't necessarily the mutant hellhounds. And also Minotaurs exist, and they're kind of, I think they were described as like creatures of chaos. They were created by Discord during his time alive in pre-history Zebraca.
Well, this is something that gets brought up in Heroes. Like, Minotaurs are they're creatures of Discord too.
Yeah, yeah. It basically how it's described, and as far as I've gotten in Homelands, is Discord created these creatures during his terrorizing of Zebraca under a different alias, because Discord is a pony word, not a zebra word. He's known as like something else for
Bedlam. Would be a good word.
I forget what Somber called him when the zebra was calling him by name. But it was definitely because he's a spirit of chaos, and the zebras are all about spirits. So it's definitely not impossible that Discord affected the zebras as much as ponies. So, but anyways, it was described that kind of like how the diamond dogs existed in Equestria, but weren't necessarily equestrian citizens. These creatures of chaos, the gargoyles, the weird hound creatures, the Minotaurs and Centaurs, existed within Zebraca, but not exactly part of Zebraca, the Zebrasian Empire or whatever. At least that's how Somber put it. And again, I am kind of a fan of Somber's work, despite how many star spirits he jumps over in his writing.
I tend like, I'm going to make a nice shout out here. At least from my own headcanon when I do things personally, because I like running tabletop games, I actually like weaving in Equestria war lore, at least bits and pieces of that, to help me build a world better.
I have no clue what that is, so.
You've never heard of Equestria War?
No.
My boy, you've not lived. So, for those who don't know, there's a Hearts of Iron 4 mod, which brings the whole thing into Equestria. And there is a sub-mod that brings into Fort Equestria 2. Well, they're working on that part, but there's going to be. I'll include the links in the chat. If you bear with me a few minutes. But yes, huh. You know what? I'll throw them in the chat during the break. Let's wait till then.
Okay.
But yes. You know what? I think probably is a good time for the break.
Yeah, unless you have another topic you want to discuss for another 10 minutes.
Well, our next commercial tonight is from our next sponsor, Sunrise Sarsaparilla. Bear with me just a brief second.
Gee, Grandpa, what's that swell-looking stuff you're drinking?
Well, my boy, it's the cool, refreshing taste of Sunrise Sarsaparilla. Unlike Sparkle Cola, Sunrise always stays smooth and carbonated, and there's no risk of death by radiation poisoning.
Jeepers, that's keen!
You said it, Grass Stain.
Remember, kids, sip your Sunrise Sarsaparilla to keep you shining, sharp, and swell. It's the official drink of the Junior Steel Rangers.
Sunshine, you'll be mine, Sunrise Sarsaparilla.
And we're back. Welcome back to Post-Apoc Horse Talk. Now we enter our final part of the night, which is our question and answer section. So if any of the audience currently watching now have any questions, please feel free to put them in. I believe we do have 2 already preset by our very active watcher, which Mr. Antique. I believe you suggested something about... Where was it back in the chat? Do you remember where it was, BG?
Oh my goodness. Let me see.
Did you lost the question?
Yes, found the question now. What kind of weapons did Equestria use against the Zebras? We know Zebras used ICBMs, or basically they launched Balefire missiles. But did the ponies have weapons like Celestia? The ponies did have weapons like Celestia 1. Okay, so yeah, that was a thing. Celestia 1 is definitely a thing. So
there was also, if you include Pink Eye's cannon, there's literally an orbital railgun.
Yeah.
Scientific, magically powered railgun that fires down on with immense destructive power. Also, there's including Project Horizon cannon. There's Project Horizons itself, which is more of a weapon against Equestria, made by Equestria. But there's also various other mega spells under Washington, most of which that did not get a chance to go off, like a implosion mega spell that Blackjack used at one point in her story.
I think you're more asking in general. So the way I see it, that Equestrian mega spells were more specific.
So they want to know like our thoughts on mega spells. I have a whole episode of the Storyteller on that, and probably not.
So the way I see it is that Zebra can mega spells because zebras don't have the same kind of magic that unicorns do. They could only really have a more general kind of purpose to it. So, Bellfire, which, if I understand the lore correctly, which you may correct me on,
enchanted dragonfire.
I believe they were made from literal dragon eggs.
Yeah, it's enchanted dragonfire. Because dragons have the ability, as shown via Spike, to send things with their fire. But with the uncontrolled Bellfire, it just sends it somewhere, probably the afterlife, because just uncontrolled destruction.
But yeah, it's just pure destruction. Because I'd argue making something that's just destructive is an awful lot more easy than making something precise.
I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I kind of created my own little headcanon, say, for the episode Storyteller that is about mega spells. But it kind of boiled down to, I think I had like 3 classifications: ritual, technological, and spiritual. Because things like Celestia 1, you had multiple unicorns in a special casting chamber in order to set it off. Whereas you have things like Gardens of Equestria that is like is controlled by like a mainframe. And then you even have the Enclave classifying a Sonic Rainboom as mega spell level, and that would be more of a innate ability of the pony, like a spiritual mega spell. And not going into too much detail because I do have a whole episode planned for that. But that basically is like, it seems like if you boil it down, because of how liberally the term mega spell is used in every Fallout Equestria story, a lot of times they're either controlled by a machine, controlled by a group of ponies, or a single pony with a special ability.
And Antique brings up another question. So in your, I'm pretty sure he's referring to the unscrewed audio files in Chapter 7. I hope he dies in a Megaspell crater. Yeah, that was intentional, almost certainly, because Bellfire bombs are very much like nukes. They explode like nukes, they leave a crater.
I briefly switched over to the chat, and it says a Pegaspell, if you will.
PG! You and
Please
your puns!
don't read the... Yes, I do like my puns. Anyway, sorry. Back to the question at hand.
Your train of thought. I just thought that was...
BG, I hate you, and I want you to die in the Pegaspell crater.
Okay. What was the reference? What was the question about unscrewed?
So, yes. It was mostly asking the question, was that intentional in Chapter 7 when the character says, yeah, they use missiles, like that's mentioned in Project Horizons. They use missiles. They also delivered them rather by what's the word? They delivered them with. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was trying to find the question to in the chat so I could derive what they were referring to specifically by looking up the chapter in question.
Right.
Chapter 7. Where's FimFiction? There it is.
So yeah, they also delivered them via saboteurs into cities using a front company, I believe, like 4 stars.
4 stars. Yep.
Which was
actually a 4 stars. Apparently, it was at least through Sombra's interpretation, was since the whole 4 stars thing, helping Nightmare Moon escape was a pony legend, not a zebra legend. It's a zebra sympathizing equestrian company, and they unknowingly inspired by the tale of Nightmare Moon. If the zebras actually what the company that was helping them was called, they probably wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole. There's unscrewed audio files. 4 5 7 mysteries and cover-ups. Where to put it?
The question.
I don't know. Where is this? I'm trying to find where it
Here's
says.
a brainstorming question. What kind of weapons did Equestria use against the Zebras? Because the Zebras use ICBMs, but the ponies did have weapons like Celestia 1. That was the question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the spelling error. Yep, was the spelling error intentional? I don't think it was.
Oh, a Megaspell Creator. Okay, no, it was supposed to be Megaspell Creator. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Okay, so I see. Yeah, that wasn't intentional.
Wow. Okay. Whoops.
Thanks for pointing that out. The author likes going back and correcting her own. Spelling mistakes.
I think I don't know if I mentioned it, but I oftentimes would write it and then immediately post it with very little no one looking over it for revisions or spelling errors. And so I mentioned I do occasionally go back and actually check the spelling or something. I think I might even have altered the story at some point to actually line up with the audio version of it. Because there's some different aspects that the audio version did that wasn't initially in the story, and I went back and added them.
And that's actually an interesting departure from the usual procedures that follow Equestria authors usually finding someone to edit their fix and such, and waiting for editing passes. Oh.
Okay, so no, the hopes he dies in the Megaspo Creator was an unintentional slip up that no one seemed to notice. I'm not even sure the Forrest noticed that, unless he auto fixed it when he was recording it.
Yeah, he definitely auto fixed it, because when I listened to it, he said crater.
Maybe he asked me if I meant that. I know, and I just never bothered to go back and change it. But it's now fixed. If you go to chapter 7 now, it does not have the spelling error. No, Screwloose is pissed. She hopes that the stable that the board went to, which is most likely stable 2, ends up being a death trap, which is more of a dramatic irony that the people reading it should know that most stables were death traps. And then I hope he, referring directly to Vile, dies in a Megaspell Creator, which isn't necessarily what happens, but he does Ghoulify, spoiler alert, but not in a Megaspell Creator, unfortunately, and he doesn't actually get to die. So, he's the antagonist for multiple fics in the audiophile series, and even begrudgingly becomes a bit of a main character / ally in a fic that I have yet to release that follows after the events of Hold the Pineapple. But I did a vote on my fanfiction. I gave the ideas I had, and people who saw the vote I think it's more interesting to follow Static Spark instead of the 86ers. I'm like, okay.
Indeed.
Another thing that you brought up earlier, it was something about the GEC. So the GEC equivalent in Fauna Equestria is, you probably know, is the Guardians of Equestria.
Guardians of Equestria creation Megaspell.
Yeah. While the Fallout equivalent, in the later versions of Fallout, it does act like a matter creator, but in the earlier versions, it's pretty much just a seed kit.
I think it was meant to be more like it was terraforming. Basically, it actually purged radiation from a certain radius and allowed for and had some untainted seeds, untainted a water purifier. That's why it was used to purify water in Fallout 3.
But the thing is with that is that was a later addition to what it actually did. Because in the first time you encounter a GEC, which is in Fallout 2, it's it's not. It's definitely not some sort of magical MacGuffin. It's just a seed kit. It's just a seed kit with untainted seeds and instructions on how to plant and basic agriculture. That's all it is. It's not some magical radiation purge. It's just basic tools to get back into civilization. It's really only a recent thing that somehow
when Bethesda came in and like, nope, we're gonna fuck shit up because if we didn't create it, we don't care about that lore.
Like, it probably almost certainly included things like some like iodine pills and water purification tablets.
Yeah, but
it really wasn't anything more advanced than that.
I don't remember the exact quote, but I think like fans were not happy that Bethesda was like, well, we didn't create Fallout 1 and 2, so we don't care about the lore that happened there. We're going to make retcons and changes as we see fit. And then they made the terrible, terrible game that turned me off of the Fallout series until Fallout 5 hopefully makes it better. Fallout 76. I was cautiously optimistic about it. I even copy and played it for like all of like an hour and didn't like it, returned it, and for half my money back. God damn it!
I'll be honest.
I didn't even want to make it store credit to buy something else through GameStop. I'm like, no, I want whatever money I can get back, and because they function on like the similar laws and regulations regarding pawn shops, I could only get like half my money back. I'm like, I don't care. I just hate, and I also am not on speaking terms with Fallout 4 because I had a Creation Club mod downloaded that was crashing my game, and Bethesda was like, nope, we're not going to have an uninstall option unless you uninstall the entire game. And I'm like, if I'm uninstalling the entire game, Bethesda, I'm not reinstalling it. And so I'm not on speaking terms with the Fallout game series currently.
Yeah. That's a bit of a different issue, though.
Sorry for the rant.
Yeah.
Sorry for the side tangent and the rant.
Yeah, the general, let's say, state of half of the source material's lore.
Because according to Todd Howard, it just works when it just doesn't.
Exactly.
Antique. They're 100% much more down to earth than pretty much any Fallout game that Bethesda got their hands on. They're greasy, shit-covered fingers on.
Which is why Outer Worlds is so great, because it was made from the company that made Fallout New Vegas and from the creators behind the original Fallout.
Well, actually, there's a fun little story about that. So, all the writers from, what was it?
Oh yeah, I'm fully aware that a lot of the Obsidian people who worked on
no, this is a different story to that.
They no longer work at Obsidian, so you probably couldn't get a New Vegas out of Obsidian now, but they still did a decent enough job with Outer Worlds.
Oh, what were you going to with them?
About was, so there was actually technically two splits when it came to people leaving Black Isle and such. So the team that did all the writing about the first Fallout game, they went off and made Troika Studios. They ended up making whole different kind of games, and obviously because of that, Fallout 2's writing, while it is good, definitely suffered a bit compared to Fallout 1. Like, it was still very good.
Then there was Fallout Tactics that wasn't really good.
The gameplay was fine, and it was just kind of an odd departure from what was already established.
To be honest, I haven't played Fallout 1 or 2 because unfortunately, I like using Mac computers, and those games only run on PC, and I'm not going to dual boot. So you
don't need to. If you get it on GOG, you can actually get a Mac OS install.
Yeah, well, I need to get because if I've told my Fallout lore expert, DCP, the name might have bad taste in some people in the Fallout fandom's mouth because DCP can kind of be hardline with like your lore must be correct. But he kind of makes fun, kind of pokes fun that I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Fallout and kind of being a fan because I haven't played 1 and 2, and like if I could, I would. I just
Well,
have.
you can now.
Well, I believe you can also purchase it on Steam. It has.
I'm pretty sure I looked it up on Steam, and I'm pretty sure it had like the PC Master Race logo on it or something like that.
Yeah,
It may have
I'm
changed.
pretty sure they got, like most of the games on Steam, as far as I'm aware, do have Mac versions.
Any other audience questions?
There was. So, what about New Vegas? Are you talking about the GEC? I'm assuming you're talking about the GEC. As far as I remember, I don't think the GEC was ever mentioned anywhere in Fallout New Vegas.
Nope, I don't think it was. The only like plant life thing was Vault 22 / X22 from the DLC. So, anyways, is there any other questions? Because I kind of have to go to the bathroom, and
well,
I don't want to. I don't want to cause another break. Go to the bathroom. So if there's more, so I'll answer more questions, but I just need to know if there is any more.
I believe that's probably a good place to end off for the night. So, this has been Post-Apoc Horse Talk.
Okay.
Thank you for interrupting my outro. This has been Post-Apoc Horse Talk with your hosts Scantages and BG, and our guest tonight has been shit, my brain farted there.
Comic
Sans Pony. And until next time, keep your eyes trained and your gun in its holster, because you never know what the wasteland brings. And good night, every pony.
Night.